including a significant section on Atkinson House, which we will come to when we get there. I do need to just change the order of papers slightly today, because Councillor Wimmer has to go to cover for me at a Borderlands meeting at 10:30, which regrettably is at the same time as this meeting. So I'm going to take paper F first, once we run through the preliminaries. And I think that was the only one, Richard, that really involves you. So that'll be fine. And we've got the sound of chainsaws and things as well, which is always refreshing. But hopefully you can hear what's going on. So the first item is apologies for absence. Have we had any? No. The second one is the minutes of the Cabinet meeting held on the 8th of February. They've been circulated, and I would like to sign those as a true and correct record. Would anyone propose those, please? Proposed by Richard Wimmer, seconded by Councillor Horncastle. All in favour, please? Okay, so I'll sign. Guy, are you in favour of that? Yep. So I will do those later on. Disclosure of members' interests. There is a paper in the closed session at which I will simply make a short declaration about when we get to the closed agenda items. Any in this particular section of the agenda? Yes, Wojciech.
I would like to declare an interest in item 13, which is the trading company's financial performance as a director of Northumberland Enterprise Holdings.
Thank you. Guy? The same one? Okay, thank you very much indeed. And Jeff Watson similarly, and John Riddle similarly as well. Okay, anything else? Right, thank you very much. So if we may then just take the first item is number F, which is the financial performance 2021 to 22, the position at the end of December 2021, report of Jan Willis, the Interim Executive Director of Finance, 151, and also Richard Wimmer. Do we have Jan on the call this morning yet or not?
Yes, I'm here, Leader.
Good morning, Jan. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Good. Would you like to just take this in a second? I'll ask Richard to give a brief overview first, and then I'll come to you, Jan. Richard.
Thank you, Chair. So I don't have anything substantial to say on this paper. It's something that comes on a regular basis to Cabinet to just update Cabinet on financial performance. Some of the highlights perhaps is an underspend of so far of £3.7 million. Some reprofiling of the capital programme that needs to be done that you'll see under Part 5 in the recommendations. There's some returning of 1.2 million to the strategic management reserve that had been held in terms of potential contingencies and so on associated with the changes with regard to the partnership with the NHS Trust. And 5 million being put in the severe weather reserve as well, which is probably notable. And then there is a recommendation towards the end of the set of recommendations regarding the wide area network, which we'll see more on in due course, but that's an interesting programme that comes about in terms of broadband and connectivity and so on up and down the county, and that has the potential, with that being renewed, to change things quite substantially in terms of some of that activity. But Jan may have bits to add on that and other points as well, I'm sure.
Thank you very much. Jan.
Thank you, Leader. I think Councillor Wimmer has covered all the key points that I was going to highlight, but I'm very happy to take any questions that members may have.
Thank you very much. Any questions, comments, thoughts? Everyone happy? Okay then, so we thank you, Jan. We have those recommendations in front of us, and there is a long list of recommendations which I won't read through. Would anyone like to propose those recommendations as they stand there? Proposed by Councillor Wimmer, seconded by Wojciech. Are you all in favour? Please show. That's unanimous. So thank you very much indeed. Now we'll go back to the agenda, which is number 4, which is the final decision on the statutory proposals for Atkinson House. Now, we have obviously looked at this very carefully over time, and we actually also have a report to Cabinet from our scrutiny committee that looked at this yesterday, sorry, on the 3rd of March, I beg your pardon. And have you all got a copy of their recommendations, which we need to look at as well? And we note that they agreed to advise the Cabinet they supported the recommendations unanimously. So we have taken this, and we will continue to take this very seriously, and fully aware of the issues and the concerns that have been raised over time on this. Underlying and overarching aim is to do the very best we can for all children in the county, and that will and is and always will remain our key ambition. We also need to make sure, though, that we listen very carefully to residents and others, and that's why we've carried out very extensive consultations. So the purpose of this report this morning is to make a decision about those proposals that are being put forward. We have a procedure, and we're going to follow it this morning. And the procedure is that I'm going to ask that we have a short update from Kath McAvoy-Carr, who is our Executive Director of Adult Social Care and Children's Services, who's with us. And we also have Sue Aviston, who's the Head of School Organisation Resources. And then, if members consider it appropriate, the officers, together with the portfolio holder, who's Guy Renner-Thompson, who's down at the bottom, will provide a presentation about the proposal. Then we're going to ask members of the Cabinet if they have anything they wish to ask officers, to then ask them. These proposals were considered on the 11th of January by the Cabinet, so members should be, and I'm sure are, very familiar with the proposal. The next stage will be for us to hear from anyone who has responded to the statutory notice, which sets out the proposal, and have asked to attend this meeting. And we do have, I'm glad to say, some members of the community and those affected, and one is Ms. J. Atkinson, and I can't see Miss J. Atkinson. So do we have a Mr. Brown representing the community? Good morning, Mr. Brown. And also present are Paul Sampson, who's the head teacher of Atkinson House. Good morning. And David Harrison, who's the chair of governors of Atkinson House. Both are present to answer questions. Good morning to you as well. They're able to answer questions if necessary, but they're not planning on speaking per se, but I'm sure if we want to ask them anything, they'll be glad to answer it. The report on the outcome of the consideration of this matter at the meeting of the Family and Children's Service, which I've described already, and they are in favour of this. We'll then talk about it a bit more and see if there's any final points that we want to make. And then I will ask Cabinet members to debate the proposal before them today and come to a decision. We'll probably have a short recess for that. To advise us on the law, and Helen Lancaster is legal advisor of the Council, who's sitting here, will be advising us on that, because we need to make sure that we are following absolutely the legal process correctly. And Cabinet will then announce its decision after this short recess, and we will announce that after we've adjourned and prepare a written record of the decision and the reasons for it, which I will ask Cabinet to confirm. Thank you. That is the plan of action, and it's going to work very seamlessly and smoothly. I absolutely am sure of that. So I'm going to ask, as a first step, I'm going to ask either Kath McAvoy-Carr or Sue Aviston to give us an update. In advance of that, I'm going to ask Guy, who is the Cabinet member responsible, just to give us a brief outline of where we are today, Guy, and your thoughts, and then I'll pass over to officers.
Yes, thank you, Leader. This is a proposal at its final stage. It's gone through all the various processes to get here. We're looking at a £5.5 million investment into this site in Pontillon, which will relocate Atkinson House from Seg Hill to the former Richard Cote site. It will in effect make Atkinson House both sexes, male and female, from single sex, and it will increase the numbers available to us from 80 to 100. The need for this extra provision has been highlighted to yourselves in many reports, with significant increases in children with social, emotional and mental health needs and other educational needs, increasing not only in Northumberland but across the United Kingdom. So we see this as an inevitable, much needed step that we need to increase our capacity for children with extra educational needs, and this is how we propose to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Guy. Sue.
Thank you very much, Leader. I have got a short presentation, but I don't know if we're going to be able to get it up. Just a couple of minutes. I'll start talking and then perhaps it'll catch up.
Okay.
Can we move on to the first slide, please? As Councillor Rona Thompson's already said, the report sets out an analysis of the representations and responses that we've actually received from interested parties during the 4-week statutory consultation that began on the 13th of January and closed on the 10th of February. To confirm, the changes that we wanted to make at Atkinson House is to relocate the school from its current site in Seg Hill to the former Richard Cote's site in Pontillon. To change the designation of the school from single-sex to co-educational, therefore allowing enrolment of girls onto the school roll. Increasing the planned pupil places at the school from 80 to 100, and all of these changes taking effect from the 1st of September 2022. And Cabinet has been asked today to make a final decision on whether or not to approve the proposed changes as set out in the statutory proposal that's attached at your appendices 1 to your report. Could I have the next slide, please? The report, in terms of the background, the rationale for the proposals are set out in paragraph 9, but can be summarised as meeting the growing demand for specialist school places, specifically for secondary age pupils with ASD and SEMH, and failure to meet this demand would result in the local authority failing in its statutory duty. As previously highlighted to Cabinet members, the number of children and young people being diagnosed with special educational needs in Northumberland has been increasing year on year for the last 10 years, equating to an average increase in demand for special school places over this period by 7% each year. However, indications are the increase will be significantly higher in the year 22-23. Within these numbers, there is a significant increase in the number of children and young people who have been identified with primary special need of autism and/or social, emotional and mental health needs. In order to address this increase in demand, Northumberland bid and was successful in our application for a free special school, which was planned to open in September 2022. The opening of the new Gilbert Ward Academy has now been delayed by a year and will now not be complete until September 2023. The delay in opening of Gilbert Ward Academy and the increasing demand outlined in the evidences the needs of additional SEMH places required across the county. It is therefore proposed that by relocating Atkinson House to the vacant former Richard Cote's building in Pontillon will provide the additional capacity that would be available on an ongoing basis rather than spending the additional funding on a temporary solution to meet the demands in the interim. The additional capacity at the proposed site for Atkinson House would also enable the school to expand its provision by moving from a single-sex provision to co-educational, thus supporting the growing demand for girls diagnosed with SEMH in the county. Background to consultation. The following 6 weeks informal consultation, Cabinet approved the publication of a statutory proposal which set out in detail the proposals for the relocation of Atkinson House and the changes to its designation of school as set out in the statutory proposal contained within your report at appendices 1. The publication of the statutory proposal opened a 4-week period of formal consultation that closed at midnight on the 10th of February. During this time, all interested parties were invited to submit comments in the form of a written representation, including those that support the proposal or objected to the proposal, by the required deadline of midnight on the 10th of February, in line with the statutory requirements. Cabinet are also reminded in making their decision that they are able to reject or support the proposal. They could support the proposal with modifications, but all of that being conditional upon gaining planning permission on by the 31st of August 2022 in relation to the proposed building changes. If the Cabinet did decide to make any modifications to the proposal, this must be made after consultation with Atkinson House's governing body. Also, to point out to Cabinet, as we have done on many occasions, that you should note within the statutory guidance for decision makers, it is recommended to not simply take into account the number of people expressing a particular view. Instead, they should give the greatest weight to the responses from those stakeholders likely to be most affected by the proposal, especially parents of the children at the affected schools. Cabinet should also note that the purpose of the statutory proposal was to seek the views of interested parties on a qualitative basis in relation to the robustness of the proposals educationally in order to inform the decision-making process of the Council's Cabinet. Therefore, it is not the intention that these results are simply used as a referendum on the proposal. Could we change the slide, please? The image on the slide in front of you now is the proposed site. For those of you that are not familiar with the site, the bottom sort of like right-hand corner of the slide are predominantly the buildings occupied by Richard Cote's primary school now. Probably the buildings that you can see least are the ones with the darker roofs, and those are the proposed buildings that we would occupy for Atkinson House should the proposal be approved for relocation. You'll probably see the significance of this as we actually move through some of the presentation. Thank you. Could we move to the next slide, please? So moving on to the consultation and the number of responses that we received and the process that we've undertaken. So during the consultation period, we did receive 111 representations. They were received by the deadline in line with the statutory guidance. Again, the breakdown of the groups are contained in paragraph 4 of your report. The representations received have been taken into account by officers when forming the recommendations in the report. The main comments and themes submitted by interested parties during the statutory period are set out in paragraphs 15 to 24 of this report, with commentary, while full representations are included at appendices 3 as a link to the report due to the number that were submitted. Could we move to the next slide, please? In Table 1, in paragraph 14 of the report, that sets out the groups who responded to the consultation, together with the number in each group and whether they supported or objected the proposal. A summary of the representation, together with the themes arising from the commentary for each group, is contained in paragraphs 15 to 24 and can be summarised as follows. Parents of students at Atkinson House, all the parents of students at Atkinson House that responded to the consultation were in support of the proposal, stating the benefits that the relocation would bring in terms of the educational offer, as well as being able to meet the needs of girls in Northumberland. The governing body and head teacher of Atkinson House fully support the rationale for the proposal and are committed to working with the local authority to provide the best possible environment and outcomes for their students. And they're here today, obviously, to answer any questions Cabinet may have around transition and changes for the school. The staff also at Atkinson House supported the rationale for the proposal in order to accommodate the growing number of children and young people in the county with SEMH needs, and agree that a larger building for Atkinson House Special School is required to better deliver the curriculum for their students. Equally, the staff support the rationale to offer provision to girls in Northumberland with SEMH needs, as there is currently no dedicated provision to meet their needs. The staff also want to forge links with the wider community and to support them to understand the work that they do for children with special educational needs and the positive effect they have on a daily basis on their daily lives of the young people. And details of their full response is contained in paragraph 18 of the report. Also, a summary of the responses received from the 22 parents from other schools and settings in Pontillon is set out in detail in paragraph 19 of the report. One parent did support the proposal, stating that every child deserves an equal chance. The remaining parents objected to the proposal, as did the Peel Trust directors, the head teacher of Richard Cote's primary school, and 3 members of the governing body of Richard Cote's primary school. Can we change the slide, please? So, consultation feedback. The concerns of those that objected to the proposals are detailed in paragraphs 19 to 21, but can be summarised into the following areas of concern. Safeguarding. Safeguarding of the pupils attending Richard Cote's C of E Primary and Little Tinklers Nursery is the main concern raised by parents of children attending these settings, As this was also the key concern raised during informal consultation, council officers have met with representatives of Peel Trust during the statutory period in order to understand their concerns in more site-specific detail and to formulate solutions that would address the concerns that they have raised. As a result of these meetings, it is proposed that both schools have their own dedicated site without any sharing of playing fields, car park or external hard play areas. Fences would be provided as an acoustic barrier at an appropriate height, together with landscaping to provide physical separation between the two schools, and these were favoured by the Peel Trust representatives in order to address their safeguarding concerns when we met with them. And more detail is contained in paragraph 32 of the report. There are also considerable concerns around traffic and the impact on the local community. But again, to address those concerns, to confirm, all students on the roll of Atkinson House Special School are entitled to home-to-school transport, and this would continue if the school was to relocate. Currently, 17 taxis are used to transport the pupils to the school, and whilst this will increase, it's highly unlikely that this would be a significant number above 25, for example. Dedicated on-site, secure drop-off and pick-up arrangements will be in place, avoiding the need for any drop-off arrangements being required outside of the school site. Alternative route to site have already been agreed to avoid adding to congestion that already appears to exist at the end of Thornhill Road, and I think this was mentioned to Cabinet at the end of informal consultation. Also to note that the site previously catered for 780 pupils prior to the reorganisation when the partnership changed to a primary-secondary organisation. Therefore, 190 pupils were also being transported at that time on 6 buses and were picked up and dropped off in laybys on Thornhill Road, as well as parents driving their children to school. Atkinson House and Richard Cote's Primary would cater for 260 less pupils than had been the case when Pontillon First and Richard Cote's Middle actually shared the site. Therefore, the impact would be less. So it's therefore clear that the number of students attending Atkinson House and in the way they are transported directly onto site in taxis would have far less impact on the existing education setting and the local community should the proposal be approved than under the previous organisation of schools. Also raised particularly by the Peel Trust was their concerns around the viability of Richard Cote's Primary School. So Peel Trust is concerned that there would be a detrimental impact on Richard Cote's C of E Primary School should Atkinson House relocated. However, with the appropriate safeguarding measures put in place, as agreed in the meetings with Peel Trust representatives during the statutory period, and as set out in paragraph 32 of your report, it is hoped that this will provide the required assurance to parents of Richard Cote's, Little Tinklers and Atkinson House that their children are safe and secure in their relevant schools should these proposals be implemented. There are currently no concerns related, from a local authority point of view, there are currently no concerns relating to the viability of Richard Cote's, as the school remains popular with parents, especially those out of county, and the first preference applications for places in reception in September 22 remain as the previous levels. A number of people also suggested alternative sites and other options. Therefore, a number of people objecting to the proposal stated other options hadn't been considered, and the empty Richard Cote's building was a quick and easy solution and not based on the needs of students. It is true that the availability of Richard Cote building has provided an opportunity for Atkinson House Special School to expand the number of students it educates and is extended its designation to include girls. However, the rationale behind the proposal is based on a location of the building being fairly central in the county in relation to the population and close and in close proximity to excellent road and transport networks, as well as offering the opportunity to serve the west of the county more effectively. While the Richard Cote Governor suggested that Kirkley Hall, for example, should be considered, the latter form parts of Northumberland College and therefore outside of the control of the local authority. Hexham Middle School site was also suggested, but being a Grade 2 listed building, this would limit the level of adaptations that could be carried out, as well as the site being so far west that it would increase travel distances significantly for the vast majority of pupils needing to attend the school. Could we change to the next slide, please? Another area of concern was the lack of example of co-location of SEMH schools, secondary particularly, with primary, and therefore Peel Trust believe that that view equates to a high level of risk. We believe that this is unfounded, and some initial research by officers have discovered 3 sites across the country where a secondary SEMH provision is co-located with a primary school. The example on your screen, and you'll see the similarities, with the site we're proposing is a school in Staffordshire where you've got a private school, primary school, next to a secondary SEMH, and you can see the similarities in the site to what we're proposing. And indeed, in light of the number of children and young people presenting with SEMH and ASD across the county are continuing to grow, the council will look to set up a similar type of integrated approach of specialist provision with mainstream provision as a principle going forward. Change to the next slide, please. We also received feedback from others. We received feedback from Newcastle City Council, who responded to the consultation in support of the proposal, and as a joint commissioner of places at Gilbert Ward Academy, understand the need for additional specialist provision to meet the needs of pupils with SEMH and ASD. We also received a response from the Newcastle Church of England Diocesan Education Board, and their response is contained in paragraph 22 of the report. But in summary, they were unable to support the proposal as it stands, as they do not yet understand how safeguarding concerns highlighted would be mitigated. Pontillon Town Council also submitted comments only and did not specifically state whether they were for or against the proposal, and therefore they were not counted in the total numbers for or against. And a response to their comments are contained in paragraph 23 of the report. We also received responses from other residents and other respondents, and we received 23 responses from this group. The majority of representatives from the residents and the people who did not specify their interest group shared similar concerns around the proposal as the parents of children attending Richard Cote's Little Tinklers, namely the safeguarding traffic and understanding the need for SEMH places, but not in Pontillon, as is referred to as in paragraph 19 of the report. Some respondents within this group also expressed concerns for the well-being of vulnerable adults in the residential area close to the school. Paragraph 32 sets out a summary of how safeguarding issues are proposed to be addressed at the former Richard Cote site, should the proposals be approved, in order to address the concerns raised by the adjacent education settings and the local community. And also for information, there haven't been any police incidents in the community involving students at Atkinson House Special School within the last 3 years under the leadership of the current head teacher and governing body. So we ask that that is also noted. Could we move to the next slide, please? Building implications. Again, I think the image on the screen shows the proposed level of buildings work that we're going to undertake and the level of separation on the site. So the proposed safeguarding measures for the site and buildings of the former Richard Cote school are set out in paragraph 32 and are in line with the DFE building bulletin guidance for specialist SEMH schools. During the consultation period, work has been undertaken to determine the scope of works required to meet the curriculum needs of Atkinson House pupils, as well as addressing the safeguarding concerns of Peel Trust. This detailed work has resulted in a recommendation to allocate £5.5 million to the project, and this would be funded from existing resources as detailed in paragraph 33 of the report. The buildings are in the process of being transferred back to the local authority following Richard Cote's relocation to the adjacent building that was previously occupied by Pontillon Primary School. And it is proposed in the meantime that the local authority enter into an agreement for the buildings under licence in order that the construction works can start prior to any land swap taking place that has been targeted by the DFE and the local authority for the end of the spring term to complete the land swap. Could we change to the next slide, please? There are also other implications set out in the report, and I'll really just highlight the ones in paragraph 26 around education standards and diversity. And therefore, as the proposal includes an increase in the planned pupil numbers and extended provision to include girls with SEMH, more young people would be able to benefit from specialist SEMH provision at the school. It is envisaged that this would enable more young people in Northumberland to achieve better outcomes, thus reducing the attainment gap between disadvantaged group of students and their peers. It should also be noted that Pontillon is one of the only 4 partnerships out of the 14 we have within the county that does not currently operate any specialist provision in any of its educational settings, and therefore this proposal would increase the diversity of provision in the area. Further implications for the students are set out in paragraph 30 and really talks about transition arrangements should the proposal be approved, and the governing body have also intimated that they would also look to change the name of the school to reflect the changes in the co-educational nature of the provision. Implications for staff are set out in paragraph 31, but there will be no negative impacts on their employment of the existing staff body. Other implications around transport and travel, we have obviously highlighted them already, and further implications are set out in paragraph 29, but Cabinet should also be aware that based on the current number of students on the roll at the school, the initial cost of home to school transport to Pontillon would increase by just over £122,000. These additional costs will be met through the increased home to school transport budget as agreed by full council at its meeting on the 23rd of February. However, you should also remember, excuse me, the majority of these students are based in the southeast of the county, and it's expected over time that more will reside more centrally and in the west of the county. Therefore, the costs of transport would reduce over a period of time. The implications over sport and recreation are set out in paragraph 35. Sorry. To enable the proposal, proposed separation of the external recreation areas, Atkinson House Special School would be allocated part of the existing mugger pitch at the site, and a new mugger would be constructed for Richard Cote's Primary School, all of this being funded by the local authority. There would also be no implications for playing fields. Could we change to the last slide, please? So in conclusion, excuse me, I'll just type it in. Okay, the groups most impacted by the proposal are the students at Atkinson House Special School and their parents and carers, as well as the staff of the school who would be prepared to fully, would have to prepare carefully for the relocation. However, in light of the representation, it appears that they are prepared to accept the work involved in the relocation in order for the current cohort of students and future cohorts, including girls, would benefit. The concerns of Peel Trust directors, the head teacher of Richard Cote's Primary School, and the governors of the school, and parents and pupils of the school and Little Tinklers Nursery, who also responded, also need to be considered. They have raised a number of safeguarding concerns at both the informal consultation and statutory consultation phases. Similarly, safeguarding concerns have been raised by residents and the group of respondents who did not specifically identify their interest in the proposal. However, as set out in paragraph 13, in light of these concerns, NCC officers organised meetings with Peel Trust representatives during the statutory period and addressed these concerns through the changes in design. And these are set out in paragraph 32. and has resulted in there being no shared areas between Atkinson House Special School and the specific arrangements for fencing and landscaping to provide segregation between the two schools. It is envisaged that this collaborative approach will continue to address any further concerns should the proposal be approved. Concerns with increased traffic and pollution were highlighted in many respondents linked to the school and the nursery on Thornhill Road and residents in response to the statutory consultation. Paragraph 19 set out the level of traffic experienced by the school and residents on Thornhill Road prior to reorganisation to the two-tier system in 2017 and proves that it was much greater than would be experienced by these proposals. Therefore, in light of the education rationale for the proposal, while being cognizant of the feedback and concerns of all the stakeholders received during both informal and formal consultation, Cabinet are recommended to approve the proposals to be implemented to take effect from September 2022. Thank you.
Sue, thank you very much. Kath, do you want to add anything?
Just to say, really, we understand that there's been some challenges and some concerns raised by the communities, and we've tried to balance that out in terms of the analysis we've done in relation to the proposals. You know, we will work very closely with the head teacher should this be agreed in order to make sure that the risks and the issues are minimised for any community concerns.
Okay, thank you. Cabinet, we'll discuss this in a few moments, but at this stage, do you have any questions specifically about what you've heard from Sue or from Kath? If not, then we'll take discussion later. Is there a specific question about something you've heard?
Yes, I did have a question.
Well, let's take it later potentially. I think it might be better, and we'll cover it as appropriate. So the next stage is to hear from anyone who's responded to the consultation, and I welcome Mr. M. Brown. Mr. Brown, do you have a first name that I could talk to?
Mike.
Mike. Are you okay sitting there?
Yes, I'm fine, yes.
Okay, so if you press your button, you'll be wired up for sound. Have you got that on? Yes.
Right, yes, I've got the button.
So over to you.
I objected to these proposals as a Pontillon resident, but I'm also a Governor at Richard Coates and a former member of the school's funding forum, in which role I've visited Atkinson House School in the past. It is a specialised special needs school providing support for pupils with social, emotional and mental health issues. And I believe that the interaction between its pupils and the other pupil groups on the site are potentially problematical. I don't think either of them would get any enjoyment out of it. I'd just like to say that the consultation of the public in Pontillon was very limited or almost non-existent, really. There was a decision not to have a public meeting because of COVID and other restrictions. I believe that the SEMH schools are an important and essential part of the educational system, and I personally am not objecting to an SEMH site in Pontillon, but just to the proposals we have where the proximity issues are quite strong. I welcome the recommendations in your office's current report to improve the separation of the schools, and if you approve the proposals before you, I hope you will commit to the completion of all those recommendations to keep the populations a little bit apart. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do you want to come back on those specific points that are raised by Mike Brown?
Yeah, really just to say that, you know, obviously it's quite a significant budget in order that we can address the concerns that have been identified by Peel Trust. But I don't know whether the head teacher who will be obviously responsible for the operation wants to come in and say any more around how the school currently operates, maybe.
Okay. Well, okay, that's helpful. Is that okay for the moment, Mr. Brown?
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So can I ask Paul Sampson, who's the head teacher of Atkinson House, just to give us your thoughts on this, please?
Thank you, Leader. We spoke with the Facts Committee on Thursday, and I think one of the things that's really important is the first thing is, what is Atkinson House? At the moment, it's called Atkinson House, or Atkinson House School, or Atkinson House Special School, or Bad Lad School. And I think it's really important as a leader, school leader, that we make sure that students in Northumberland who have got a special educational need are respected and get the support that they need. I would equally say girls need an equality as well. Social emotional mental health, we have 79 students on site at this moment in time. They suffer from an identity issue, an attachment issue, which leads to significant anxiety. If you create the right environment and the right support, these young people can succeed and can be successful within our community. The idea of moving school isn't just necessary to provide more space, but also the right environment to meet the needs of the young children. And at this moment in time, it's an Atkinson House. The student's voice is very clear. They want to achieve. They want to be recognised as an equal. They want to be in a school. Every student who comes to Atkinson House has an educational healthcare plan. It's a legal document, and it sets out the individual needs that each young person has. It carries a significant amount of money. And we have to look at how do we support not only the academic achievement of those young people, but also how to develop the social and emotional side. There's three aspects. As head teacher for the last 3 years, we haven't had visitors on site. So there's been significant change in the last 3 years. We do improve the academic profile of the young people. They don't have a learning need. They have significant trauma need. We've changed the curriculum to focus on the core, English, maths and science, as well as creative subjects. A student left last year with 5 GCSEs, 4 level 5s and 1 level 4, and can achieve. We're trying to create a curriculum that meets the needs of the young people. We've also got a wraparound therapeutic programme where we look at speech and language, we look at the trauma, we look at how we improve and support that young person's living. When I spoke to the councillors of Pontillon, it was quite amazing how the lack of awareness of what Atkinson House really is. I was informed that it was a school where you have to be sent to by a judge, that every student had a police record. This is not the case. I have 79 students and 7 have police involvement. I've been a mainstream head too. The percentage is equal to a mainstream school. No student has been sent to us by a judge. We are not a secure unit. We're a school. We're a special school, or in better terms, a school for additional needs. We're here to support the young people, and we would like to have an environment and a building and a facility where we can socially integrate with the community and access better resources and a better environment for the young people. Safeguarding is a statutory requirement of all head teachers and governing bodies. When there's a comment about saying there is an issue around safeguarding, it is a direct challenge to the head teacher and governing body that says, you're not doing your job. It's a legal and Ofsted challenge. Safeguarding is number 1. We've been a community partner. In all the schools that I've been in, I've met with community counsellors and leads every 6 weeks. We have a meeting inside school. We listen to the concerns. As any school leader, there will be concerns from a local community about a school outside, whether it's parking, whether it's smoking, whether it's students off-site. Any school head teacher or leader will come across those challenges. We think this is a fantastic opportunity to work with the girls. I'm working with the pupil referral unit at the moment. That is co-educational, and there is no provision for girls at this moment in time in Northumberland. We would like to have an inclusive agenda and support the work that the local authority want to achieve. Thanks, Leader.
Thank you, that's really helpful. Can I then move on to David Harrison, who's the Chair of the Governors? David.
Thank you, Leader. Good morning, everyone. Just really from a governing body context, just to support everything that Paul has said, we stand firmly behind Paul's leadership of the school. I think it's a well-known fact that the governing body have raised issues around co-educational provision at Atkinson House going back to Paul, prior to Paul's appointment, and there's a record of that. We were constrained by the physicality of Atkinson House. There's no room to expand, so I think this will give us a fantastic opportunity to deliver a first-class education to some of the most vulnerable students in Northumberland, and obviously bringing girls into that mix will help in the long run. As Paul has said, I think we fully support engaging with the local community and all stakeholders to make sure that this works. We are very aware of the concerns around safeguarding, but as Paul has already said, that's part of the remit of the governing body, and we will ensure that that statutory obligation is met. So, again, as I said, we are fully behind this proposal, and should it be approved today, we will make that a first-class provision. Thank you, Leader.
Lovely. Thank you very much indeed. We have got the report from the Scrutiny Committee on the 3rd of March. Have you all had a chance to look at this, Cabinet? Are there any questions coming from what was discussed at that meeting? I guess if I could just raise one thing, which is around the concerns of residents in relation to highways and security. Could you just touch on both of those very quickly, please? What concerns there are around the highways issues and on the security in particular?
Thank you. Yeah, so the concerns raised were around the volumes of traffic. I think you'll see, in the presentation that we've already given around how that has been reduced in terms of the number of pupils, even if Atkinson House and Richard Coates Primary were both full, that there'd be, more than 250 less pupils attending the school every day. Therefore, the impact on traffic would be less. In terms of the specific transport arrangements for the pupils at Atkinson House, all of those arrangements will happen on site. There'll be no off-site drop-off. Taxis will arrive into the school site, dedicated drop-off areas where the pupils will be met from their taxis by members of staff, as they do now. It's exactly the same arrangements that are already in operation at Atkinson House. In terms of safeguarding, again, I think the report sets out very clearly about we will follow the DFE guidance for SEMH schools, the appropriate fencing of the appropriate height, together with acoustic barriers that have been suggested and agreed with Peel Trust, so that we make sure that there is the right levels of segregation and separation between the two schools. Thank you.
That's excellent, thank you. Okay, so the next step is to ask Cabinet members if you've got any questions for anyone that has spoken thus far. No. Guy Renner-Thompson.
Thanks, Leader. It should also be pointed out that we've already had one meeting of the local county councillors to Pontillon, where we could discuss concerns raised by members of the community via them, and that is something that we can continue doing going forward, so that if there are further concerns raised by the community to local councillors, we can continue meeting in that way.
Thank you. Cabinet, any questions, any queries, anything you'd like more information on? Yes, Councillor Horncastle.
Just a comment. During this process that's been taking place, there has been quite a bit of resistance from the local community in Pontillon, and I can understand that a little bit, because people don't like change much. And they have worries and concerns. But after listening to the head, what he's just said, I really welcome this, and I just wish, if this is agreed by the Cabinet, I just wish you all the best for the future.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to now, nothing else at the moment, I'm going to ask Helen Lancaster, our legal advisor, to advise us on the law and the guidance that we need to be aware of in arriving at our decision, which we will make shortly. Helen.
Thank you, Chair. I think just within the process, I think there was just one stage before this, which was asking the proposers if there are any final points they would wish to make.
Any outstanding points you wish to make?
Sorry, Councillor Thompson. There was one point that was raised at FACS, just to note that isn't in the report, that the Roman Catholic Diocese fully support the proposal as well. Okay. So apologies, I didn't bring that to your attention. That's the only point.
Okay, thank you. Anything else anyone would like to say?
Thank you, Chair. So, yes, Chair, you've heard the proposals are to relocate Atkinson House Special School from its current site in Seg Hill, Northumberland, to the former Richard Cote School site in Pontillon, Northumberland, with effect from the 1st of September 2022, and to change the designation of the school from single-sex to co-educational with effect from the 1st of September 2022, thus enabling the enrolment of girls onto the school roll. And thirdly, increasing the planned pupil places at the school from 80 to 100 with effect from the 1st of September 2022. So a statutory notice was published by Northumberland County Council on the 13th of January 2022, and this sets out the above proposals. This legal note sets out the issues which Cabinet need to take into account in reaching a decision on the above proposal, and sets out specific advice on a range of points. So you're being asked to consider whether to approve or reject the proposal. If Cabinet were to approve the proposal, then such approval can be with modifications. However, you would firstly have to consult with the proposer on these modifications. Approval of the proposal can also be subject to certain prescribed conditions being met. The Cabinet, as the decision maker, must set a date by which any stipulated conditions must be met, and this date must be before the proposed implementation date of the proposal. Cabinet are requested to approve the proposals conditional upon the granting of planning permission by the 31st of August 2022 in relation to the proposed building works, which are outlined in paragraph 33 of the report to Cabinet. So in legal terms, the above proposals are characterised as prescribed alterations to a maintained school under the statutory guidance, making significant changes, prescribed alterations to maintained schools. Please note, when directing Cabinet to page numbers within the guidance, references are to page numbers of the full copy of the guidance. The full guidance is included in the report to Cabinet at Appendix 2. The guidance sets out the statutory process which must be followed, and also aspects which must be considered in coming to a decision regarding the proposals published by Northumberland County Council on 13th of January 2022. In coming to a decision on approving or rejecting the proposal, you must take into account the guidance. The statutory process for making prescribed alterations to a maintained school must follow the 4 stages. 1. Publication. 2. Representation. 3. Decision. And 4. Implementation. The first 2 stages of the statutory process cover procedural aspects which a decision maker must satisfy itself has taken place before considering the actual merits of a proposal. Currently, we're at the decision stage. So stage 1, publication of the statutory proposal. There is no prescribed pre-publication consultation period. However, there is a strong expectation that schools and local authorities will consult interested parties in order to develop their proposal prior to its publication date, in accordance with their public law duty to act rationally and to take into account all relevant considerations. A pre-publication informal consultation period on these proposals took place between the 13th of October 2021 and 1st December 2021. All during school term time. I would therefore advise that this expectation as set out in the statutory guidance has been met. The first two stages of the statutory process cover areas on which a decision maker has to satisfy itself have taken place before considering the actual merits of the proposal. Stage 1 concerns the publication of the statutory proposal. The statutory proposal must be published on either the school or local authority's website as applicable, along with a statement detailing how copies of the proposal may be obtained, that anyone may object to, support or comment on the proposal, the date that the representation period ends, and the address to which objections or comments should be submitted. A brief notice, including details of how the full proposal can be accessed, e.g. the website address, must be published in a local newspaper. If the proposal is published by a governing body, then notification must also be posted in a conspicuous place on the school premises and at all entrances to the school. There are further requirements that within 1 week of the date of publication on the website, the proposer must send a copy of the proposal to the governing body / local authority as appropriate, the parents of every registered pupil at the school, where the school is a special school, if it involves or is likely to affect a school which has a religious character, then the local Church of England diocese and the local Roman Catholic diocese. Proposals affecting a special school should go to any local authority that has commissioned a place at the school, i.e. all relevant authorities who have made an out-of-county borough placement there, and any other person or body deemed appropriate. The relevant statutory proposal is found at Appendix 1 of the Cabinet Report, and the proposal meets and has been published in accordance with the statutory requirements. So Stage 2, representation. The next consideration concerns representations and whether the correct amount of time was allowed for representations to be made and received. The representation period must last 4 weeks. Representations were able to be made between 13th January 2022 and 10th February 2022. It's therefore clear from the proposal that the requisite 4 weeks was given for representations to be both made and received. We therefore consider that the statutory requirements regarding publication of the statutory proposal and the period allowed for formal consultation whereby representations could be made have all been complied with. In total, 111 representations were received by the deadline. The outcome of consultation and summary of the representations, both in favour and against, are set out in the report on pages 6 to 18, and a link is provided to view all the representations at Appendix 3. So decision makers should not simply take into account the numbers of people expressing a particular view. Instead, they should give the greatest weight to responses from those stakeholders likely to be most affected by a proposal, i.e. especially parents of children at the affected schools. Stages 3 and 4, decision and implementation. The third and fourth stages of the process are the decision and implementation stages. A decision must be made within 2 months of the end of the representation period, i.e. no later than 10th April 2022. We're currently at the decision stage. Implementation will depend upon the decision taken today. Decision makers will need to be satisfied that the appropriate fair and open local consultation and/or representation period has been carried out and that the proposer has given full consideration to all the responses received. Decision makers should not simply take account of the numbers of people expressing a particular view. Instead, they should give the greatest weight to responses from those stakeholders likely to be most affected by a proposal, especially parents of children at the affected schools. If you're satisfied that the stages noted above relating to the statutory process have taken place in accordance with the guidance and legislation, you should then take into account a number of factors highlighted in the guidance in order to reach your decision. So factors from the guidance you should consider. The following factors are outlined in the report and the guidance, and these should be taken into consideration. You should bear in mind that these factors are not an exhaustive list and the importance of each factor will vary. So, consideration of consultation and representation period. You will need to be satisfied that the appropriate fair and open local consultation and representation period has been carried out and that the proposer has given full consideration to all the responses received. As the decision makers, you must consider all the views submitted, including all support for, objections to and comments on the proposal, and a summary of the representations is provided in the report, section 15, pages 7 to 18. Education standards and diversity of provision. As decision makers, you should consider the quality and diversity of schools in the area and whether the proposals will meet or affect the needs of parents, raise local standards and narrow attainment gaps. This is covered in paragraph 26 of the report to Cabinet on page 18. Equal opportunity issues. Decision makers must have regard to the public sector equality duty of local authorities / governing bodies, which requires them to have due regard to the need to eliminate discrimination, advance equality of opportunity and foster good relations. This is covered in paragraph 27 of the report to Cabinet on page 19. An equalities impact assessment has been carried out during the pre-publication and statutory consultation processes. A copy of this can be found at Appendix 4 of the report, and Cabinet should have regard to it. Community cohesion. When considering these proposals, as decision makers, you must consider their impact on community cohesion. This will need to be considered on a case-by-case basis, taking account of the community served by the school and the views of different sections within the community. This is covered at paragraph 28 of the report. Travel and accessibility. You need to be satisfied that accessibility planning has been properly taken into account, along with the local authority's duty to promote the use of sustainable travel and transport to school. Proposed changes should not adversely impact disadvantaged groups, and you should bear in mind a proposal should not unreasonably extend journey times, increase transport costs, or result in too many children being able to travel sustainably due to unsuitable walking or cycle routes. This is addressed at paragraph 29 of the report. Funding. You need to be satisfied that any land, premises or necessary funding required to implement the proposal will be available and that all relevant local parties have given their agreement. A proposal cannot be approved conditionally upon funding being made available. Where proposers are relying on the department as a source of capital funding, there can be no assumption that the approval of a proposal will trigger the release of capital funds from the department unless the department has previously confirmed in writing that such resources will be available, nor can any allocation in principle be increased. In such circumstances, the proposal should be rejected or consideration deferred until it's clear that the capital necessary to implement the proposal will be provided. Building works and funding are covered in paragraph 33 of the report, and the financial implications are further dealt with at page 23 of the report. School premises and playing fields. Under the School Premises England Regulations 2012, all schools maintained by local authorities are required to provide suitable outdoor space in order to enable physical education to be provided to pupils in accordance with the school curriculum and for pupils to play outside safely. This is covered at paragraphs 33 and 35 of the report. So, options. Cabinet are able to make the following range of decisions regarding this proposal. 1. Reject the proposal. 2. Approve the proposal with modification. 3. Approve the proposal with modifications, having consulted the LA and or governing body as appropriate. Or 4. Approve the proposal with or without modification, subject to certain conditions being met. The Cabinet, as the decision maker, must set a date by which any conditions must be met, and this must be a date before the proposed implementation date of the proposal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Helen. That's really sums up our responsibilities and demonstrates the need for us having had that consultation and serious thought for a number of months about this particular initiative. Are there any final questions or any thoughts? John Riddle?
Yeah, just one question. I think, did the head teacher say the number currently was, I think, 74 in the paper? Was it 78, did you say?
It's up to 79 at this moment in time.
79. I'm just questioning whether the 100 is actually sufficient. You know, I mean, if we've got 79 boys, that's not allowing many girls. You know, we're talking about equality and equal opportunities. Is 100 a high enough figure? That's my question.
I'll take that, I think. Obviously our data tells us that is sufficient. I think we also need to bear in mind that there'll be a cohort of children leaving Atkinson House at the end of term, so therefore there'll be some more vacant places, not just the 20 that currently exist. But I think the numbers are in line with expectations about how capacity is needed, particularly for SEMH.
Good, thank you very much. Yes, please. Yes, of course.
I've got to go to the boss before I answer. I think what I said before was about creating the right environment. Many of the students who've come have left mainstream because they've got 1,000 or up to 2,000 students, and they just can't find that confidence within themselves when it's too busy. We do need to meet need, so that's that balance of making sure we've got the right number, but making sure we are doing the right job with the numbers that we have. Sue's correct, we've got 22 year 11 students who'll be leaving us this year, so they'll drop out, and then you can create some more. And I think the conversation about the academy in the next year's time would allow us to then work in partnership. We wouldn't see us in competition, we'd see ourselves in partnership. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If there are no more questions, we have to make a decision. You have recommendations there in front of you. Would anyone like to propose those? Proposed by Guy Renner-Thompson, seconded by Councillor Riddle. Can you please show if you are agreeable to those? That is unanimous. We are now going to adjourn for a very short period. If you could bear with us, we need to record a written decision on this and also the reasons for making that decision. But we won't be long. So if you can manage without us for 5 minutes, we'll be back by then. Thank you. We have considered the following written reasons for agreeing this and the reason for the decision, which are: 1, the educational rationale of the proposal to increase SEMH places in Northumberland to meet the growing need for both boys and girls is sound. Secondly, the proposed building in Pontillon is an appropriate location for Atkinson House, being a former school. 3, the staff and governing body of Atkinson House School are fully supportive of the rationale and the proposal. 4, the funding of the necessary suitability works to the proposed building is in place. 5, Cabinet recognises and has considered the safeguarding concerns raised during the consultation by the Peel Trust. And we've discussed that again, of course, this morning. Parents at the neighbouring provision and residents. Therefore, it is an expectation that NCC officers will work with neighbouring schools to ensure that the proposed safeguarding measures to the building are made in collaboration and agreed before putting in place. And that is what we have decided on that one. There is also an expectation that Atkinson House School will plan for an effective transition of its students, again working collaboratively on an ongoing basis with its neighbours to ensure that these concerns are allayed. 6. In the light of point 5, Cabinet will require an update on how the transition and operation of the school has worked within 12 months of implementation. And if you could mark that, Karen, please, in the minutes as another of our reasons, and we would want that to happen within 12 months. And then finally, probably most importantly, the consultation has been appropriate and robust. So those are our reasons, and that is our decision. Thank you all very much for attending. Please feel free to leave, those of you that have come for this, if you wish, and thank you very much again for coming this morning. We move now on to our next paper, which is around climate change. If I can just very briefly introduce this, we do have Matt Baker here this morning. The climate change priority for this council remains as ambitious and as strong as it did right from day one, when we decided not to be petitioned to declare a climate change emergency, but instead decided to do it ourselves. And we've worked very well with climate action groups and residents from day one, and that continues to be a very sound and good relationship. We have a very strong steering group and a very effective all-member working group. Above all, we have a very strong political ambition as this Conservative administration to ensure that we do all we can for all our residents in this very important area moving forward. And I suppose probably even more important than that, we have a really good, small but very effective team led by Matt Baker, who's with us this morning, who will give us a brief update. And I'm afraid it will have to be fairly brief because we are short of time this morning, Matt, but will give us a brief update on all the work that he and his team have been doing, not just by not by kind of dictating to people, but by bringing people with us. And the work that we've been doing with community groups, with schools, and now with a whole range of new people will help us reach our target that we've set ourselves. So, Matt, over to you.
Thank you, Leader. I'll be brief, and then probably there'll be a brief conversation about the recommendations. We've got some proposals from the Scrutiny Committee to adjust some of those, so we'll just need to cover that as well, if that's okay. So just in terms of the broader context of the paper, so the position is changing quite rapidly in terms of climate change. There was a recent IPCC report talking about the kind of world position, which is worth referring to, and people listening to what Antonio Guterres said, the Secretary General of the UN, in terms of where the position is globally. Fuel poverty is on the rise. There's some recent research done which suggests that by October, 30% of homes might actually effectively be in fuel poverty. And you can't help but notice the need for further energy security and resilience given recent storm events and the atrocities that are occurring over in Ukraine. So the kind of broader context for climate change and what it can deliver for the county is changing and continues to be important. In terms of what we've achieved, so over the last 12 months, we've managed to engage with a wide range of communities. We've engaged with around 16% of households across the county through various schemes. We've attracted a range of different inward investment into the county, and we've helped to tackle some social inequality, especially around fuel poverty and heating, as well as take our responsibility for stewardship locally and nationally really seriously. In terms of kind of key achievements, we've now got and continue to have plans to deploy more EV chargers per head than any local authority in England. We've started on the path of retrofitting a number of homes, focusing on lower household income homes, and we've managed to halve the emissions that the council has direct responsibility for. That is in some way connected to COVID and business miles, but is something which is still an achievement that we should acknowledge. From these foundations, we've got a good platform to kind of move forward through the next 18 months as we develop, so the next 6 months, sorry, as we develop the next version of the action plan, which we'll publish in January next year. There are a number of key challenges on the way, so the scale of resident engagement that we are planning and continue to target is significant. We need to increase our in-house delivery capability. We've had some experience from the first year which suggests taking greater ownership for that will deliver better results for the council and for the residents. And there is likely to be change in scope in what we've been asked to look at nationally following the outturn of the recent COP conference. Before I kind of cover the recommendations and the proposals from the Scrutiny Committee to adjust them slightly, I would echo the point that Chair made around this being a collaborative effort across all services. There's a small nucleus of people who are kind of dedicated to this area, but it really is a whole council effort. I could spend time listing off all services in terms of their involvement, which would be a little tedious, but effectively every service is somehow connected into what we're doing, and we're really grateful for that shared support and ownership from across the council, and also the support that we get from members from all parties, and the support we get from residents who in the main are really encouraging for what we're trying to do and see the purpose of this and why it's so important. In terms of the recommendations, they're on page 3 of the report. There are 6 recommendations in here. The Scrutiny Committee, when we met with them last week, proposed 3 adjustments to those recommendations, which I think have been sent round to Cabinet before this meeting. Just for kind of completeness, the first proposed change is that if recommendation 3 says executive directors and cabinet members should complete carbon literacy training in 2022. The chair of the Scrutiny Committee asked for that to be changed to be all members. So there's an adjustment around that covering not just cabinet members but all members, which is bold, but it's something we're happy to look at. The second change is just to be a little bit clear in terms of how members can access information around climate change, because they get asked lots of questions by residents. So there's a recommendation that we put in place specific channel for members reaching into the team to get the information they need for engagement with residents. And then the third recommendation, which is a little bit more involved, I'm just going to read because it is an additional recommendation and is a bit more meaty. So an additional recommendation should be considered: the process for dealing with planning applications, including positive consideration of the delivery of low carbon solutions or other solutions that support the delivery of net zero by 2030, should be included in the review of the local plan and completed jointly by the planning team and the climate change team. This work would be completed alongside the Climate Change Service continuing to be consulted party on all planning applications that impact positively or negatively the commitment to deliver net zero by 2030 for the county. So effectively a joint piece of work with planning, which it is in effect already underway, but the Scrutiny Chair was keen to have that documented as part of the report. That's the end of the summary.
Excellent. Thank you very much indeed. Rob, thoughts on that extra recommendation, please?
Yeah, Glenn, I can confirm that we've been working very closely with Matt's team on rolling out both advice to residents and businesses about climate change in planning and actually how we operationalise it through making decisions, and it's welcomed approach. Okay.
Well, that's good, and thank you both for working so closely on this. Yes, Jeff Watson.
Just a question, if I may. It's a great report, very comprehensive. I'm just a bit looking at the 120 charges that we're going to put in the car park in County Hall. That's more than we've got in the rest of Northumberland put together, I think. I just wonder whether this might raise some questions. You know, and that's 120 spaces, I presume, in the car park, which will be occupied all day by people charging up there. And if they're not in use, these places will stay empty. Don't misunderstand me. I'm not being awkward. I want to try and do this, but I just think the practicalities of it, I need to understand it a little better than I do at the moment.
Who's going to take that one?
Yeah, I can.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Watson. So, in terms of the 120 spaces, so one of the conditions of getting the funding that we got for the solar carport was that we put in charging points with the solar carport. So there was something around how we got access to the funding, which made that important. I think your second point around usage of charge points, we get into a longer conversation, which we probably don't have here, but I'm happy to take offline around the behavioural science a little bit of climate change and how actually seeing something that's there to use does encourage uptake. So there's this interesting rub we have now around climate where we're trying to change behaviour away from diesel and fossil fuel cars into a different mode of transport, which it is actually part of what we're trying to do. So I agree it will feel different and perhaps uncomfortable, but that might be part of the model as we kind of move forward and change our behaviour a little bit around climate change. But I'm happy to kind of talk about that in more detail. There's a really basic thing though, which is when people have finished charging their car, that they shouldn't park there, they should move their car. And that's again another behavioural thing around owning an EV, which is really important and is definitely not embedded in our culture at the moment, but needs to be. But I'm really happy to meet separately and talk through some of that in detail if that's helpful.
Just come back, Chair. I mean, I accept that, but again, I just wonder, we're building new car parks elsewhere, and we're putting in sort of 3 or 4 spaces in, but in County Hall, we're putting 120. This doesn't balance to me. But there we go.
Good. Yes, Rob.
Yeah, could I just jump in there, Leader, if you don't mind? On many new schemes going through planning from the private sector, we are negotiating 100% coverage with EV charging, both for all resident spaces and all for visitor spaces. It's a matter of negotiation, though. New building regs that are coming in will make it mandatory within 18 months, and so this is getting ahead of the curve, I think. Thanks.
That's good, excellent. Well, look, let's talk about this in more detail after this meeting. John.
Yeah, you know, I mean, we've all experienced huge costs of electricity and diesel and petrol just very recently. You know, there is this point about synthetic fuels and hydrogenated vegetable oil. It was more expensive than diesel, but I'm sure now, unless they've hyped the price up of that, it'll actually be a great opportunity for our fleet to actually use it and probably save money and help the planet.
Absolutely, a very good point, and we certainly will need to look at that clearly. Absolutely. So, could we go to the recommendations? Are you happy? Certainly, I am. Are you all happy that we include the revised version, which is that all members should be offered training, and this year, and secondly, that the planning application should include that dialogue around planning and the local plan. I'll actually like to propose those recommendations as amended, which I've just done. Do I have a seconder? Guy Renner-Thompson, thank you. Are you all in favour? Please show. that looks unanimous. Thank you very much, and thanks a lot, Matt, for coming. So we now move on to the Household Support Fund update, and this is Maureen Taylor. Good morning, Maureen. I would like, if you want to just say a few words to introduce it.
Will do. Yes, so this is an update on the Household Support Fund. This is the grant, the allocation we're given from government that was going to run from the 6th of October through to the 31st of March 2022. And the Northumberland allocation was 2.4 million. This is an update to tell you where we are in terms of allocations to our residents with that fund. So far, the expenditure to the 31st of December, which is the information deadline that we work with DWP on, we spent an allocation of £780,623, with a commitment to 1.6 million to the end of that date. So accounts out, but actually commitments going through. The available fund left for us from the beginning of January to the 31st of March is 835,000. We have a plan that will ensure that we do spend that full 2.4 million that we've been allocated. It's important that we do get this out to our most vulnerable residents. Things of note in the report, the allocations have been split from food, energy and water support, essentials that are linked to energy and water, any wider essentials and any household costs. We've been able to make sure that residents who have been classified or have come forward with vulnerabilities have been able to be supported either through this fund or through other allocations and other means. In total, over 21,000 awards have been made, 21,000 residents have had the benefit of this, and this is only to the 31st of December. The Northumberland Communities team are working very, very widespread across the county to make sure that we are reaching as many points as we can. The plan for the food delivery, the holiday activity and food delivery for Christmas went well. There is a plan to support that for Easter. We have got approval from government to allow that to happen, even though it goes beyond the 31st of March financial deadline. There are rural clinics operating at the moment where we're going into village halls, working closely with parish councils to make sure that the team can get out there and run mini surgeries and mini clinics to make local populations aware that the household fund is there. Those conversations have been really well received, not huge numbers in some areas, but very, very welcomed. And we are able to either make a direct award literally on the day or within a few hours, or we can direct those residents to other services or other allocations of cash or benefit if this one doesn't fit. Happy to take any questions.
Great, that's good, and it's a very encouraging report. Wendy Patterson, do you want to add anything?
Thank you, Leader. Really, Maureen's touched on most of everything that we do, but I just wanted to reiterate that this council has used a wide range of data to identify and give support to a broad range of vulnerable households throughout the area, supporting free school meals during non-term time, households experiencing food poverty, and vulnerable residents experiencing fuel stress due to high fuel costs and energy costs. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much, Wendy. We note that the Scrutiny Committee looked at this and they welcome it. They welcome the recommendations. Does anyone have any questions, or should we just go to the recommendations? Any questions first? No? Would anyone like to propose the recommendation then, please? That's proposed by Councillor Patterson and seconded by Councillor Watson. All in favour, please? Yep, that's unanimous. Lovely. Thank you very much, and thank you, Maureen. We move on to the Pontillon Burn Biodiversity Net Gain Site and approval of capital and revenue expenditure. Councillor Horncastle, do you wish to say anything at the beginning of this?
Please, thank you, Councillor Sanderson. Yes, this is something new for us to take on board. It's the development of the Pontillon Burn Biodiversity Net Gain Site. So why is it in front of us? It's in front of us to seek the approval for the capital and revenue expenditure that will be incurred in the development of the first phase of the Pontillon biodiversity net gain site, which is funded fully by Section 106 contribution from British Vault. So what's this about? Well, in layman's terms, it's something new. That if you're going to concrete or tarmac over something, then in future you're going to have to replicate that in an environmental friendly way somewhere else with a net gain of at least 10%. How has it come about? It's come about because of a new Environmental Act that received royal assent in November, just passed. And it introduces a mandatory requirement for most types of planning applications to demonstrate a net gain of 10%. And that will not come into effect until autumn 2023. However, because we're actually doing this now, it shows we're at the forefront of good practice. So I would say a big thank you to Rob Murphy and his team, Advance and British Vault for this. So I just picked out a few important points about this. To plan an application that felt to be determined under the environmental impact assessment regulations, where there's a particular need to demonstrate that ecological issues have been addressed thoroughly. For these reasons, it was agreed with British Vault that they would need to develop a scheme that demonstrated a biodiversity net gain of at least 10%. Because the Pontillon site is in ownership of Advance, it is a party to the 106 agreement, as well as British Vault and the County Council. So, it's 67 hectares, this site, which is, in old money, is 165 acres. On this basis, the Section 106 agreement for the planning permission commits British Vault to make a contribution of nearly 1.7 million to the council for habitat creation at Pontillon and its subsequent management for a period of 30 years. Revenue funding will actually compromise one full-time officer for the first 3 years of the establishment. And we've also got to look at the potential for the future, and there's a further 35 hectares there, which would be available for any new development that comes alongside British Vault. So we've got the space to do that. And this was the British Vault plan application was the first time that the Plan Service used DEFRA's recently developed biodiversity net gain to quantify ecological impacts. So there you go, we're ahead of the game, Leader, and it's over to you. We've got the 5 recommendations, which is in the report.
Yes, thank you very much. Rob Murphy, do you have anything you want to add to this?
I would just add to what Councillor Horncastle is saying, that this gives us comparative advantage with other local authorities in that we have identified land for different types of advanced manufacturing inward investment in the southeast of the county as part of the local plan. Those will need biodiversity offsetting, as is the case up and down the country, and we'll have a ready-made resource ready that we can say that, subject to the appropriate payment, that this quite difficult legislative hurdle that we can facilitate it being overcome and make Northumberland a more inward investor-friendly place. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Any questions? If not, should we go to the recommendations? Thank you very much. The recommendations are proposed by Councillor Horncastle, seconded by Councillor Poshjai. Are you all in favour? Please show. Okay, thank you very much. All in favour. That's unanimous. And we move on now to the Long Framington Neighbourhood Plan. A very bulky document, very well presented. I think we've all had a good look at this. Are there any any additional points anyone wishes to make to this? Rob Murphy, just short. Is there an update at all?
Thanks, Leader. I'll just give you a quick overview of this. I won't go into much detail. That it's been a very, very popular neighbourhood planning process, probably as a result of the very high levels of housing growth seen in Long Framington over recent years. But the neighbourhood plan was supported by a turnout and a vote of 94.25% in favour of making the neighbourhood plan. The neighbourhood plan, I think, is a good example of what communities can do now at the local level. So it includes both a new strong settlement boundary, but it also includes provisions where community-led social housing for local needs can be accommodated both inside the settlement and outside it. There is support for rural-based businesses outside the settlement, and it comes with a list as well, which we've been encouraging, of community actions where matters that can't be addressed directly with policy can be listed as aspirations in the local community. So that includes, for example, a site, which could be potentially for start-up businesses or for social housing. And then we can use this list as a way of helping with bid funding or Section 106 funding in the event that it comes along. So all in all, I think it's a good example of a very well-owned process from the local community. And just to be clear, neighbourhood plans only require a simple majority to get through. So if one person voted and that person voted in favour, that would be enough. And to make it, which is another term for adoption, we just need to make sure that all due legal process has been followed, because it's been through an independent inspection, and I confirm that all steps have been complied with on this. So on this basis, the advice is to make, which is also known as adopting the neighbourhood plan in this context. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other Colin Horncastle, briefly?
Yeah, just quickly, Councillor Sanderson. I mean, you can tell by usually on the referendum and neighbourhood plan, you're looking at high 20-30% turnout. Because this one's been so high, it just shows that there's a real local demand to sort of curtail the massive development that's gone on in this area. And out of 7 policies, Policy 7 is about high quality design, which I'm all in favour of. And high quality design does not necessarily mean it makes anything more expensive, but it's the first policy identifies the settlement boundary. This is something that could really help to curtail the development in that area, so I welcome it.
Thank you very much. Any questions? I think we all welcome this and congratulate the village on a really good document. Thank you very much to the help that we provided at our end, and obviously to all the residents who were involved. I think the next thing they're going to ask for is a school, Rob, am I right? Anyway, we'll see what happens with that. Thank you all very much. No questions? So could someone formally put those recommendations proposed by Councillor Paterson, seconded by Councillor Horncastle? Are you all in favour of those, please? That's unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. And I think, no, it doesn't quite take us to the end, does it? We've got new capital proposals considered by the Office of Capital Strategy Group, which are before you in paper G. Jan, do you want to say anything on these specifically? Or we... well,
apologies, Leader.
Yeah, that's fine.
Trying to unmute myself. I have nothing to add to the recommendations, but as always, happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. I think there was some discussion when we looked at this about the 1068 Shawbottle Road Junction, and that seemed to be quite a significant amount of money to be agreeing to. You are persuaded, though, Rob, that this is the right thing for us to be doing?
Okay, thanks, Leader. This is a very interesting example of a tension that we need to resolve, I believe, via the Devo discussions. Okay. The local plan allocated and mapped out economic growth and housing growth in the county right up until the mid-1930s. 2030s, sorry. As part of that, we have to do a reality check with central government and identify where infrastructure works was going to be required. Okay. The Lineart Business Park, our work shows that out of the 16.5 hectares making up the area, it's likely that 14 hectares will come forward over the next, over the next decade or so. And that will create, using average densities, something like 595 jobs. All great stuff. The infrastructure delivery plan work, as part of the local plan, identified up front that this junction was a pinch point. Okay, so we are faced then with a situation at the moment, and this may be for a short period between the local plan coming through and us setting in place new ways of strategic infrastructure investment, is that the risk is that the first person to come along potentially cops for the full lot of the junction upgrade costs. We can't just leave it because National Highways, formerly the Highways Agency, have put in place a holding objection covering effectively the entire business park, saying that that can't be built out until this junction is upgraded. The only way of cutting that Gordian knot I could see was for us to front fund this junction works using a recycled pot approach, then to put in place a constraint layer over the entire business park such that every inward investor coming along retrospectively paid for the highway works that we would otherwise ask them to be done. The only alternative here would be effectively to sterilise development of this business park. So it is a difficult decision, but I absolutely recommend that we go ahead with this. We have secured definitely the first £143,000 as a contribution towards this, and the scheme to relocate an important local employer onto the site will contribute further funding, and then subsequent inward investors will pay for the rest. I know that the landowners are aggressively marketing this land, so I'm hopeful that this land will be developed before the end of this decade and the money paid back. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rob. So that is the proposal. We'll just take this one first. So you have that recommendation. Are you happy with that? Proposed by Councillor John Riddle and seconded by Councillor Watson. Are you all agreed? Please show. Yeah. Okay, that's unanimous. So can we move on then to the next one? Jan, anything particular you want to raise on this one?
Nothing to add, Leader.
No, okay, thank you very much. This is the Newbiggin Sports Centre, the Football Foundation grant. Anyone wish to speak on this? We've read this. We think this is the right thing to do, and we're very supportive of this. Can we just show again if we are supportive? And I think we are. Yes, that's proposed by Councillor Horncastle, seconded by Councillor Watson. We're unanimous on Newbiggin, and I hope that it becomes a very useful and good resource for Newbiggin. Corbridge Middle School, the 3G pitch, which I think is going to be largely funded by a developer. Rob, is that right? Yes, I think that one. Yep, it is. Okay. Any questions, queries on this one? Okay, so is there a proposer to agree this one? Proposed by Councillor Watson, seconded by Councillor Horncastle. All in favour? That's unanimous as well. So that takes us to the end of that report. Thank you very much indeed. All good.
Chair, you've missed 2.3 and 2.5.
Sorry about that. What page is that? Page 2. Yes. This is the contracts in excess of 2 million. Anyone want to speak on this? We've read this. We've understood it. Jan, anything you want to add? Okay. I'm lip reading you. I got as far as yes, I think it was.
Apologies. Is a straightforward proposal to proceed with the tender process for a new year contract for the re-roofing of council-owned properties. So nothing to add.
Okay, thank you. So I'll take this one with the last one, which is the additional funding for Willowburn. This is the leisure centre, wanting to have some more money for the ground source heat pump. Are you okay with that one, everyone? So if we take those two together, can you give me a proposed by John Riddle, seconded by Jeff Watson. All in favour of those two together? Thank you very much indeed. Okay, that takes us to the end of that report. We must try and lay these out in a slightly different way, I think, in future. my mistake there. I'm sorry to miss those two. That takes us to the end of formal business. We do have some urgent business, so we will need to take a view on that. Could somebody move the necessary recommendation, please? Proposed by Councillor Patterson, seconded by Councillor Riddle. All in favour of moving into closed session? That's exclusion of press and public. So thank you all very much for joining this meeting. We'll now move into closed session.